How many shooters do you believe were involved in this, and how many shots altogether?
I don't know how many shots there were, but I have been told by pretty reliable sources that there were at least 2 other shooters other than the one up in the book repository. Now, I don't know whether Lee Harvey Oswald was up there or whether someone else was up there. I read one book that put a different shooter up there, and I talked to a person that I consider very reliable and a person who had not read any conspiracy books, who said that the person who used to be, I'll rephrase it, that the person I talked to said that so-and-so was on the Grassy Knoll. Okay. Now, I asked this person if they had read any conspiracy books. They said no. Now, I looked through conspiracy books, and there was only one conspiracy book that mentioned that name. And that book was written by Sam Giancana's younger brother.
You mean Double Cross?
Double Cross. Double Cross is the only book up until that time that ever mentioned that individual. Now, when I talked to this person in 2004, someone learned that I was doing a book on the Kennedy assassination, and they said, you should talk to this person. That individual told me in 2004 that the person that's mentioned in Double Cross was on the Grassy Knoll. Now, that person that Sam Giancana's younger brother mentioned, and the person who was on the Grassy Knoll, he used to be, before he was murdered gangland style in Chicago, was the FBI's top level mob informant in the Chicago office, and I know the agent who used to handle him, and I mentioned when I first heard from this Cuban that there was an assassination being planned. I went to this agent who was Bill Romer, he's now deceased, and I said, do you know that the CIA is training members of the Mafia down in Florida how to kill somebody without it looking like a mob hit? And he said, Wes, the guy who's giving you this information is nuts, and you're beginning to sound like you're nuts. He said, I don't think you ought to tell anybody anything about this because you're liable to get a mental discharge from the FBI. And I'm thinking, well, okay, you don't want to believe it, you don't want to believe it. Anyway, I read Bill Romer's book, and he mentions this man by name, and when that person in 2004 said that that man was on the Grassy Knoll, I just about dropped my wallet on the ground. I did not know that he was there. I knew that he was involved in training the mob. I knew that he was involved in training the mob at the CIA's secret camp in Florida. I knew all that, but I didn't know that he was in Dallas the day that Kennedy was shot until 2004. Now that is, to me, is spooky.